Peace, peace. Can you hear me?
Yeah, peace, brother.
All right, go to.
Peace. We live. Go, hey, Nyhiem,
Oh
brother
yeah,
Nyhiem. You want to give your intro? We live, man. You might as well. You here
I
now? You
didn't
might
know.
as well. Peace,
I
peace.
didn't
Give
know
it,
y'all was
give it to the
live.
people, man.
I,
Yeah, I just,
I
I
was
just, I just
jumping.
went in.
I was jumping on to help with the with the intro. Peace, peace. What's going on, fam? It's your brother Naheem, BKA Lord Abba, aka Mr. Just the Facts. Make sure y'all hit that like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell icon next to the subscribe button. Become a part of the notification nation so that you will be informed every single time Be the Power goes live. Make sure y'all click like on the video. And y'all already know what it is, man. Support the brother Marcel. Welcome back to Be the Power. Shout out Sister Roz. Shout out BTP. Let's get it in, family. I ain't mean to interrupt the live though. I ain't know y'all was on live yet.
Hey,
So
man.
definitely, yeah, yo, I'm listening in the background.
No doubt, bro.
All
So
right,
peace to
peace.
the fam, peace to the fam. This is Be the Power. We here with our sister Roz Mickens from By the People Media. We got brother Josh in the building, and we got brother Marcel Dixon in the building, back in the building. Great to see you, brother. We've been paying attention to everything you've been doing. You're doing your thing. You, like I said, off camera, you carrying that message, man, and I appreciate that. Introduce yourself to the people. Who is Marcel Dixon? For those that don't know, I know that's like a question that you probably answered a million times by now. You know what I'm saying? But listen, man, we got to keep going over these same things for those who probably don't know. So who is Marcel Dixon?
Well, I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for 17 years. But the thing that identifies me most is my lineage, my heritage. I am Gullah Geechee to the core, or Sea Island Creole. Born in Savannah, Georgia, but raised in Jasper County, South Carolina, which is a coastal rural county right across the bridge from Savannah, Georgia. My mother's side and my father's side are both here in the South Carolina coast, and going back to at least the mid 1700s on both sides. We are right here in the a little bit in the Georgetown County, Charleston County area, but mainly down in the Beaufort County area, in the Jasper County area. And I am running for South Carolina's 6th congressional district. But it's also important to say that I'm running for reparations. But I also have to say against whom I'm running, because that is almost just as important. I'm running against
That's right.
Congressman James Clyburn, who has held this office for 30 years, and yet his district, where I've lived my entire life, worked my entire life, and have taught the kids here for my entire career, is the sixth poorest in the United States of America out of 435.
That's right. That's right. Hey, listen. We've talked in the past about our family ancestry and everything like that. So I just want to say my family is also from South Carolina. My father's side, particularly um, Charleston. Charleston and
Right,
Sumter. As a matter of fact, he was born in Sumter County, and he always talked about being Geechee, being Gullah. You know what I mean? And we grew up hearing that. We really didn't understand what he was talking about because we're from New York City. We didn't, that's like country stuff to us. It's like, well, I don't know what that is. But yeah, man, our family is also from the Sumter area in Geechee and all of that kind of stuff. Remember, Cato, we were talking. I was asking you if you had heard about the Turks. Right, remember? I think on one of the episodes we were talking about the
right,
Turks in South Carolina. Right, you know what I mean. And I think you was breaking down about some people called Tesks, if I remember
right.
correctly.
There's a
hmm I think you muted. You muted
Your
yourself.
audio is off.
I
Your
haven't been able
audio is
to
off.
research into the Turks. I want to say you might be related to James Clyburn because his family is in Sumter as well. That's where he's from. But I want to say also, I know your sister has a y'all have a seafood business, both of you. And some of the dishes y'all make, I don't know if
Right.
y'all know it, but a lot of those dishes y'all make are actually Gullah Geechee dishes. especially the fried, the soft shell
Mm.
crab. Those are things that originate here. If you do
Mm-hmm.
hush puppies, people don't realize hush puppies
Yep.
is a Gullah Geechee creation right here in Carleton County on Edisto Island. But I don't know much about the Turks, but there was another language here called Tek, which is almost completely unknown. It was once spoken here. It's not
Mm-hmm.
Tut. I thought people were just talking about Tut, but it's called Tek, but it's very little studied. But one of my friends introduced me to it. So there's lots of things to learn about this area here.
Right. Right. So let me just say this real quick. Um, for those who don't know, Kato is back on the channel. He's been on our platform a few times in the past. He used to be, I consider him part of the BTP family. He was, that's where I met him, right here at BTP. And so I'm just honored to have the brother back. And the Roz, Josh, either one of you guys have any thing you want to add before we really jump into the questions, etc.
Well, I just wanted to say real quick, thank you, BTP, for letting me as By the People Media and come onto this platform and be able to speak to Brother Cato. I feel like I know I feel like he's family anyway, so it's kind of hard interviewing family, but I'm gonna be as objective as possible, and I'm gonna pose some questions, hopefully that nobody else has in this long string or run up here, and even if they have, then you and I will be able to chop it up, with a little bit of different angle on it. So thank you for allowing me to be here, and thank you, Greg Marcel Dixon, for being here also.
Bro, you can just call me Marcel or Cato. I haven't been called Cato in a while. I missed that name. So,
Okay, I'm gonna call you Kato because I'm used to
right,
Hey
that.
man,
Cato worked for me.
yo, see, that's how I know. I know you as Kato. I'm like, this is Kato with Mir right here. You know what I'm saying? But go
Do
ahead,
y'all
Josh.
know the history of that name is a Gullah Geechee history as well? You know, the Stono Rebellion, which was the largest
Hmm.
slave revolt in North America. Sometimes they call it Cato's conspiracy. And a lot of the guys here in
That's
the
right.
Low Country who are tied to history, sometimes we all take the nickname Cato. I added Emir just to say I'm the rebellious king, but yeah, Cato. And I see
That's right.
Hartsville. Someone say Hartsville. That's in Dorchester.
Yeah.
Bebe Rodriguez. Hartsville's in Dorchester County.
And there was a rebellion here in New York City where there was a Cato who was the leader of the rebellion in New York too, at one of these slave
Oh,
uprisings here in New York
no,
City.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about slavery
Hmm.
in the North. That's one area where I'm very weak.
Yeah,
Tell
man.
tell a little bit more about that, and because
Oh man. You know
and
what?
tie it in
I'm
because I
gonna.
know the story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, um, the one about Cato, I have to go back into it, but there was also one where I think there was a brother by the name of Caesar. There was one with a brother named Cato and one with
Yeah.
a brother named Caesar, and Caesar um, tried to take over New York City from the then governor at the time, and what he did was I think he had set some fires. Him and some of the other slaves had set some fires in the city, which at that time was really just downtown Manhattan, and they wound up getting caught. Some of them I think got were executed. They put them on trial. Some of them got executed, and I think some were sent to like the Barbados or something, Barbados or Bahamas or something like that. They sent some of them out, but yeah, Caesar, which is the other one I'm talking about. Caesar was a bad dude, and he was trying to, but Cato was too. So, but anyway, Raj, you got anything else? Josh, you got anything else before we jump into these questions?
Yeah, man. Let's just jump into it.
Let's
Oh,
do.
baby. That county, Hartsville is in Darlington County, not Dorchester. Darlington County. I just remembered it.
Hmm. You said
Appreciate
something,
it.
Ross?
No, I said let's do it. Let's get into it.
Okay. Well, look, I want to ask this question that I have a few questions. I'm sure Roz and Josh have some as well. Um, One of the things that I wanted to get at was the fact that you stated that you don't have like political experience. So if you could like explain to the people what qualifies Marcel to represent South Carolina's 6th district as someone who really doesn't have a political background.
I may not have a political background, but I have a political backbone. And
Okay.
that's what qualifies me as the person to represent South Carolina's 6th congressional district. Because Clyburn's been in there for 30 years. And I don't care what excuse people try to pull out of a hat. 30 years, 6th poorest district in the United States of America, 435. How do you skip 420 something districts, get almost to the top, becoming almost the poorest district in the nation? He has experience. He knows
That's
his
right.
way around DC. He has connections. And look what good his experience is getting us. So when I say to people, you want someone who's experienced or you want someone who's going to be effective? And I tell him effectiveness is going to win the entire time because I can tell you what his experience has gotten us. That's not just the 6th poorest district, the 3rd poorest for children overall. Majority of children here are black. This district is 50 to 60% black. He has the highest rate of amputations for black Americans in one of the worst communities for medical outcomes. This is in Richland County in Columbia. So many black people are getting their arms and legs amputated. The Centers for Disease Control is investigating as we speak why it is happening. He has the most toxic water in the nation, North Charleston. Okay. Denmark, South Carolina, and Bamberg County hasn't had clean water in over 10 years. Bernie Sanders during 2020 had to bring pallets of drinking water for the poor majority black people in Bamberg County in the town of Denmark. He has the highest eviction rate in the entire country. Okay? His district has the highest amount of people who are uninsured. And yes, the worst health outcomes, highest levels of diabetes, highest levels of strokes. Now, of course, I'm not going to necessarily blame, if people are surprised when I say this, I'm not going to blame James Clyburn for these conditions because the truth of the matter is he did not create them. They were here when he was born, and they've only gotten worse. But I will blame him for not using his legislative power to do something about these conditions. Because when you look at the data, Black Americans, freedmen, descendants of American slaves, just so people are very clear when I say Black Americans, we are disproportionately impacted by these things. And when it comes to economics, our wealth is heading downward. Most of our land, 15 million acres of 16 million, have been stolen. Okay? And yet you look at Clyburn's legislative record and you will not see any policies he's written to do something about these matters that impacts the majority of his district. But he's done things specifically for Catawba Native Americans who used
There
to
you go.
enslave our people.
That's
He's
right.
gotten them reparations. The first bill he sponsored in 1993 was to give the Catawba Native Americans, a group of Native Americans that used to enslave our people and were brutal. Not only enslaved, were brutal slave catchers. So brutal that sometimes our poor, unfortunate ancestor who was captured would beg to go back to the white enslavers. He sponsored a bill in 1993 to give them special protections, privileges, rights, and recognitions. That's pretty much reparations. Then in November 2021, he wrote a bill for them to get 20 acres of land on which they're going to build a multi-million-dollar casino, which will be tax-free, and they will get billions of dollars. There's one Native American tribe where they get so much money from casinos. Every member of the tribe gets $1 million in cash. Meanwhile, Gullah Geechee people, your lineage, my lineage, we have lost nearly all of our coastal front, riverfront property. I'm fighting to keep the property that my father's side of the family got from Port Royal Experiment in Special Field Order 15.
Mm.
I
Wow.
have a quick
Wow.
question regarding
Okay.
what you were saying. Cato, in your district, how many other people? Because if you're looking at the data according to how you presented it, how many other people or how many endorsements have you gotten from different groups in your district?
Well, my district is 97% rural. It's very neglected. So you're not going to find a lot of nonprofits in my district. And that's a good thing. because some we have are good, some are good, but the ones we've had that have been there, I can't point to one thing they've been able to do to actually help the people here. Now, the organizations that exist in my district, like some of the teacher education organizations, they refrain from endorsing candidates. I've had some people who are head of nonprofits tell me they cannot endorse candidates, obviously, but they support me, but they're going to do it privately. Because if they do come out in public support of me and I lose, Clyburn, being there for 30 years, being a person with a lot of connections, to snap his fingers and destroy them. I have received endorsements, though, from some organizations that are not necessarily based in South Carolina. Some of them are organizations that cater to the needs of Black Americans. One of them is concerned Black American citizens. News toter. There's one guy who used to work for Bernie Sanders' campaign as his chief of staff or one of his campaign managers, Marcus Farrell. He's endorsed me. So I've gotten some. And what I've read for a first-time candidate who's not running on a safe platform, I can easily have just ran on something like healthcare for all. And then people will be wrapping their arms around me like a python. I'm running on Repair Black America to Fix America. Anytime you stand up for Black America in this nation, you're always going to be met with a lot of resistance. So the fact that I've even gotten one endorsement is a surprise to me. But the endorsements I've gotten to most that has mattered the most are the over 3,000 people that have donated as of now over $140,000 to me in less than 7 months to a candidate that no one heard of, has no experience, but is just running on doing the right thing. Those are the endorsements that mean the most. And on voting day, May 31st to June 14th.
That's right. That's right. Was that satisfactory, Raj? You want to follow up, or you good?
Okay, I'm good. I just wanted to find out too how, as far as your ground, as far as street team, people knocking on doors. What's happening there? Because you seem like you have. I mean, then just listening to you, I know that you're passionate, you're straightforward, you don't duck and dodge questions,
No.
and you are, as an educator. I mean, dear and dear to my
You're
heart, you're
right.
my educator. But as an educator, you seem to really be bringing the fire that is really needed, that people are not used to. How is your ground game? What's happening there in South Carolina?
So I have several street teams, and being that we're in the final stretch, there are some things I keep to myself because Clyburn has never had to work for votes. And so what his team does, and I promise you, I have revealed things on interviews. Like I said, I was going to a certain event, and then I would see his team there. And when I realized when I wasn't saying it, I will go there and they wouldn't be there. And you know for a fact, they watch my videos, they go in Twitter spaces, they probably record things that they're probably going to try to spin. I have street teams all throughout the district. Some of them are volunteers. Some of them I do have to pay. Some of them I pay because they want to be able to volunteer, but I at least need to be able to pay for their fuel and their food. And some people I am paying to really canvass my district, to target over 200,000 homes. Then I make public appearances. I go to public events. I just went to the Black Expo here in Columbia, South Carolina. Y'all see me. I went to the Baby's concert, the Baby and what's Rob Wave, and I forgot the girl's name. I forgot her name. I went to their concert. I go to nightclubs. I go to soul food restaurants. I go to barbershops. I go to beauty salons. I show up at places where Clyburn definitely probably thinks is beneath him. My ground game is one of showing up for our people. I go to the people. I try to do some town halls. They were a disaster. People here don't come to town halls. That showed me, and that was my team's suggestion. I told them town halls usually don't work here because people just aren't that politically engaged. I mean, for 30 years, Clyburn hasn't had a competitor. So people here aren't even used to being politically engaged. You have to go to where the people are. So that includes
Facts.
churches. That includes their jobs. And we've been doing all of that.
All right,
Now,
thank you so
I
much.
got a question.
okay, go ahead, Charles.
As you said, Brother Marcel, when Congressman Clyburn first won his position, the one that you're looking to unseat him from, I think the first Jurassic Park movie was about to drop. That was 1993. So, could you describe like how the conditions of the people um, maybe have changed or not changed or stayed the same in your lifetime during that period of time that he's been in office?
Things have actually gotten worse. That's
Hmm.
the sad part. Things have actually gotten worse. Don't fall for this smoke screen that they tried to show us. They will tell you that Jasper County, my county, which used to be one of the poorest counties in South Carolina, still is a poor county. They will say that its wealth has shot up. That's only because they have Sun City, Hilton Head Island here, which is a retirement community where the average home starts at something like $375,000. The majority of the people there are white retirees who have to be over 55 years old to live in that community. They have moved into my county. So overall, it looks like the county is doing better. But when you take out their data and you just put the original inhabitants of this county, the freedmen, you will see that things have actually gotten worse. And not only that, here is proof. Land theft. When I was growing up in the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s, Black Americans still owned a lot of land. My community, where my people had lived for generations, was still there. We were off of a highway going from Beaufort, South Carolina, to Bluffton to Savannah. So it was a very popular highway. But at that time, our area was rural and pretty desolate. When our area started to develop and Hilton Head Island started to become a major tourist attraction, they widened the highway to run us off, and then Budweiser brought off the remnant of the land that we had. Never did anything with it. Now that's happened to all of the families that used to live in my community. Our land is gone. From where does most land come from America? Land. How did white Americans get their wealth? Which is why the average white American family has wealth, not income, of $200,000 or more. Whereas for Black Americans, it was $24,000, but falling now because white Americans benefited from the Homestead Act, the one for where they first came from England, and they were giving land to people who were settled, the one they did after the Revolutionary War, the most popular one that Abraham Lincoln signed in 1861 that gave away 10% of the entire United States of America, hundreds of millions of acres to white American families. And the Southern Homestead Act that was supposed to be for us, but ended up mainly going to white Americans as well. Even if they sold their land, like a lot of them did, it was able to give them wealth. Black Americans were never able to get wealth from our land because we deal with a system called heirs property. When property is inherited by a family, but without a will. So you can only share the property. And it used to happen, they did these things called partition sales, where a family member could sell their share or be forced to sell their share by violence. And a judge, or usually a racist anti-Black judge, will say, well, it's 10 Negroes living on that property. Here's $10,000. Give each of them $1,000. Tell them to get gone. Happen all the time. $10,000 for maybe 9 or 10 acres of property that was probably worth $450,000. It would happen all the time. Nikki Haley, believe it or not, Nikki Haley, who I'm no fan of, met her in person. She gave me a book she signed for me when I was district teacher of the year, but I never cared for her. But Nikki Haley actually signed legislation that put an end to that type of partition sales in South Carolina. It stopped the bleeding of hundreds of thousands of property. Clyburn, in all his years, never did one thing to stop it. It took a Indian, whatever. It took an Indian Republican lady to actually do something about Black people getting their property stolen. Right now, as we speak, Tim Scott, and I'm no fan of Tim Scott necessarily, but he's the only person in Congress talking about heirs property and how Black people have lost their land because had our land stolen. Because Tim Scott is from Charleston, South Carolina as well, so I'm sure he's going through it. My point is, we've lost our land now because they've either did eminent domain or it was partition sale. So now Black Americans don't even have heirs property on which to put a home. And even though you can't get equity from property when it's heirs property unless everyone agrees, there's no chance of us doing it now because it's gone. The population in my district fell by 8%, according to the most recent census. Now, Black Americans usually don't fill out the census here, but still, it fell from what it was 2010. In some counties, like Allendale County, it fell by as much as 12%. So we've lost our land, we're losing population, and we're being gentrified out of the historic communities by mainly white liberal allies, retirees.
Wow.
Well, I guess the natural question that would come from that is, why would Clyburn, why would Clyburn actually do that? Like, why would he allow that to happen? Why would he not do anything about it? What is his incentive?
I'm going to tell you what someone on his team told me. I guess he has a little attitude. I ain't saying a name on which got attitude for, but I'll say a name with the attitude. Someone on his team told me some crazy analogy about how Harriet Tubman rescued enslaved people in the dark of the night. And that what he was saying to me was that if Clyburn did things outwardly, that it will make him a target. I told him that bird ain't gonna fly. No wings, no feathers. I told him I'm not buying that. I said Clyburn has been in support of illegal immigrants getting citizenship. That is something that's unpopular with a large swath of America. I told them
That's true.
Clyburn has now been in support of gay marriage, something that was unpopular with a lot of Americans. I said people are always willing to do things that are right but unpopular for every other group. Only when it comes to Black Americans do they want to play. Well, you gotta be smooth with it now because you know they're gonna target him now. Are we not worth you being a target? If you are not willing to be a target for your people, then for whom are you willing to be a target? Okay? I said he's not what a leader is supposed to be willing to be a target for their people. And if you're not willing to be a target on behalf of your people, then you sure as hell don't deserve the votes of those people.
Come on, brother. Man, brother, preaching right there. Brother, preaching right there. That's right, Cato. Hey, look, um, you mentioned competition and that Clyburn really hasn't had any competition, and I kind of wanted to ask you about the other guy. I think his name is Michael Addison,
Yes.
who's running. Who is he? And do you have a sense of what the people in your district feel about this guy in terms of in terms of whether or not they would support him and his platform, whatever that may be?
Dr. Michael Addison, he's a chiropractor. And he's been running for decades. He runs for different seats. He's ran for state representative, state senator. He runs for different seats. He's what they call, and I'm not saying to be funny, but this is a literal term. I was reading Ballotpedia profiles, his and some others, and they said perennial candidate. And perennial means for everlasting. So he's what some people call a perennial candidate. Like they're always running for seats. I have met him a few times, and he considers himself a conservative Democrat. I will say this, though. His main thing is universal health care, but his platform is also rural fire and rescue, police officers, healthcare, obviously. But you know what? I've met with him. I've met with the Republicans who are running against Clyburn, and technically we're running against me. And all of us agree that after 30 years, there is no excuses for the condition of our region being one of the poorest conditions in the nation. The heartbreaking thing is South Carolina was once the richest place in the United States of America. Of course, it didn't benefit us, the people who were actually the source of the wealth, who grew the rice and grew the indigo and smithed the iron. That's why Charleston and Savannah are known for the iron fists and the iron benches. All of those things we did that made it wealthy. But it's kind of ironic that the descendants of those people now are living in what is one of the poorest regions. I'm not sure how people receive Dr. Addison. I mean, people, and here in South Carolina, people, especially my region, the coastal region, people, especially Black people, are usually going to be very polite to a candidate, especially another Black candidate. That's a good thing, and that could be a bad thing. That's how Clyburn is able to skirt by without being held accountable. But people are nice to him, but he doesn't make a lot of public appearances, so I don't know how he will be well received.
So basically, it's really you and Clyburn at this point. That's the way it's looking. for the most part with this primary.
I'll say we've been the most active of all of the Democratic primary. We definitely have. We've been the most active. But I want to say this too. South Carolina is an open primary, meaning that a Republican can vote for me as well. So if a white Republican says, I don't like this reparations guy, that's what they've been calling me lately, and I've embraced it. That's why one of my commercials say, "Yep, I'm that reparations guy." You damn right. If it's okay for people to run on the white working class, I can run on reparations for freemen. But people will sometimes say, I don't like reparations, but you're against illegal immigration, which I'm proudly am. You are against abortion outside of extreme circumstances, which I proudly am. And you are pro-Second Amendment, which I'm becoming more and more and more of a radical pro-Second Amendment person. My brothers are shocked because I used to hate guns, hated bullets, thought it was evil. And I'm now more pro-Second Amendment than they are. Some white Republicans will say, okay, I don't like reparations, but they know my district is 73% Democrat. So Republican winning here is highly unlikely, not impossible. So some of them will say, I'm just going to vote for the Democratic guy who has some things that we have some things in common with. So I say that to say that Dr. Addison, considering himself a conservative Democrat, could very well attract some white Republican voters. I may very well too, just because all they have to hear is I'm against illegal immigration, and I usually win them over right then and there. They don't even care about reparations no more. They're like, we'll argue about
That's
that
right.
later. Let's get the illegal immigrants out. I've literally had one of them say that to me. She was like,
immigration.
I'll argue with you about reparations after you get the illegal immigrants out. She said, deal. I said, deal. So
illegal immigration and Second Amendment, right? The Second Amendment plays a role too, because
they know that they know that taking guns from people, they know that's just not going to happen. It's not that it can't be done. It's just the resources it will take for 400 million gun owners. It will take more resources. And I said, if we were to do that, then they can't tell me that they can't round up illegal immigrants and deport them. If you can go and find 400 million gun owners or 400 million guns, you can find illegal immigrants. So a lot of people don't really talk about, I guess they just know in South Carolina, you ain't going to take their gun one way or the other. And that ain't just the white people either. Black South Carolinians. I ain't talking about young black guys. I'm talking about old black ladies wearing big church hats who are just as adamant about not taking their guns either. And they carry them in their purses, coming to and leaving from church. In South Carolina, you can believe everyone's carrying a gun somewhere. Young ladies, the older white men.
They shot up the church, right? Right there in, was it Charleston? Shot up the church. Just today, you had a school shot up with a elementary school with a bunch of kids, babies. You know what I'm saying? Babies. So yeah, I don't see taking guns, from people. As a matter of fact, a lot of these democratic areas that have all of these strict gun laws, like places like New York City, where you can't carry, etc. But the amount of shootings that are taking place here, something needs to be done about that, man. Because the fact of the matter is, the bad guys are the ones with the guns.
Exactly.
The bad guys are the ones with the guns. Go ahead, Kato.
See, I like to look at history. Prohibition was a failure, where they tried to keep alcohol out the nation. All it did was allow the Italian mafia, the French mafia, and the Irish mafia to grow large and powerful because of the black market. And the entire, and Chicago, just one city, people like to talk about Chicago now. No, if you want to see Chicago when it was really violent and bloody, go to the Chicago of the Prohibition era, where you had over 500 murders and the population was just a fraction of what it is now. And those were mainly white Italian mafias, Irish people murdering and killing each other over territorial disputes over importing alcohol. So prohibition shows me that it's much more easier to sometimes regulate certain things than to try to prohibit certain things. My approach when it comes to, first of all, for black people, with that Buffalo shooting, I am encouraging all of us to get well armed and to be well trained and to be ready to shoot. Now, and people think I'm playing. I have been out in public before, and I've had a few weird things happen. Like I had one guy, like he was following me. I don't know, I was joking. I was like, oh, hold on. I wasn't playing with you. Don't come around me acting crazy. Don't come around me acting crazy. It's funny. And so you got to be ready to shoot. Be ready to shoot. We always have to, and it's sad this is the case, and the chances of us being in a mass shooting is very slim, just to be very fair, but we always have to be ready to defend ourselves. The same way they teach defensive driving, where they say you always have to assume the driver in front of you is going to do something that's going to cause an accident. We have to be on the defensive. Always assume that we may have to take actions to protect ourselves. I believe we need to have armed guards for schools. I'm just at that point now. When I visited the Capitol and the White House, they had armed guards all around them. I feel we need to have armed guards for schools. But when it comes to majority black schools, I feel those armed guards definitely need to be black, and they definitely need to be screened for any anti-blackness, because even some black people inherited anti-blackness or buy into myths such as black children are the worst behaved. When no, black children are not the worst behaved. They've been the worst treated, so they're the most traumatized, so sometimes they may act out more. But the data actually shows black children, white children actually commit around the same amount of infractions. Black children are just the most harshly punished.
That's a fact. And let's go a little further, because this is something that we've spoken on the program a few times. Many times, I mean, throughout the years, black people, period, have been made the face of crime, right? And one of the things that white supremacists like to do is play the statistic game, right? Because they know, well, they'll say stuff like, well, you're 14% of the population, yet you make up X amount of percent of the crimes. Here's the problem. And this is what I always tell people to do. Go with the raw numbers. Go to the Bureau of Prisons. Go to the FBI's arrest records, right? And see, and one of the things that they do is they play with the FBI arrest numbers, not really letting people know that those arrests don't always result in conviction, right? Because the FBI reports on arrests. They're not necessarily reporting on the convictions. The other thing is the Equal Justice Initiative and the what's the other organization?
Freedom Initiative. The Freedom Project.
Yeah. They talk about how black people make up the majority of wrongful convictions and the majority of the exonerations in this country. The one thing that people got to realize is white men have always been the majority of the prison population. Always. It has never changed. They've always been the majority of the prison population. That's the case to this day. They make up the majority of the arrests. They make up the majority of the convictions, period. So don't let white folks play percentage games with you. They've always been that way, because one of the things they don't do is they don't disaggregate blackness when they start talking about black people make up the majority of the prison population, or the majority of the arrests and the majority of the crimes, etc. The shooting that took place in New York City recently on the subway was an immigrant dude that shot another immigrant. So one of the things that I realized at watching what's going on in New York City is that it's especially a place like New York, which is one of those sanctuary cities where all of these people come to. One of the things I realized is that a whole lot of the crimes that are being committed in this city are being committed by people who are of foreign background. That's an actual fact. I pay attention to that. Just watch the news, watch the news, watch the news. And every time when they start to reveal people's identities, you can see what the hell is actually going on. But go ahead, Cato, go in.
You're absolutely right. I never get tired of shutting down the black on black crime myth or the black criminality myth. One, the FBI came into existence. Really, the unwritten reason was to really frame, implicate, and to destroy and derail the civil rights movement by framing lead. That was the original purpose of the Bureau of Federal Investigations, as it was originally called. But even during that time, even when Hoover, whatever that guy, that crook's name, was in charge of it, when he was actually cooking books and trying to frame black leaders, even then to now, black Americans, less than 1%, not 1%, less than 1% of the black American population will ever commit a violent crime. That's one. Two, what they don't say also is within that under 1% of the black community that commits a violent crime, sometimes it's the same person committing multiple crimes, because it's been shown that unfortunately, sometimes the most violent offenders will be given parole, whereas a person like Khalif Browder, who just steals a Snicker dog or is wrongly accused of stealing a backpack, will get the book thrown at him. So the point of the matter is, there's even if we were to say all the things for which we were arrested is something of which we were guilty, that would still be less than 1% of the black community committing a crime, and it will be usually one person doing the same crime again and again and again. Second, I want to say is, you already brought it up, 62% of all exonerations, wrongful convictions, are black men. When you add black women, it goes up to black people being 70% of all the people that were wrongly convicted of a crime. And you already touched on the first part. FBI only shows arrest records. Obviously, with things like stop and frisk, and the fact that we had was that in Alabama, you had a whole police department that had to be shuttered because they were framing black men for drug convictions. Those things used to happen on a chronic level, and we can believe they still do. So when you have black people who are more likely to be stopped, more likely to have the book thrown at them for simple infractions that white people are pretty much giving a slap on the wrist for, if even that, of course we're going to be arrested the most, but that doesn't mean we are more guilty. Then the fact of the matter is that violent crime, which is usually the crime that most people are concerned with, correlates not with blackness, but it correlates with poverty. So when you think about the fact that black Americans are overrepresented living in impoverished cities as a result of housing covenants, Jim Crow, and redlining, and white Americans, the average of poverty rate among white Americans is like 7-8%. Among black Americans, it's like 30%. We should be committing a whole lot more crimes when you factor in our poverty rate. The fact that less than 1% of us commit violent crimes, and the ones that are convicted are probably, a good bit of them are in there wrongfully, we almost commit no crimes. And if we did not have the poverty that was imposed upon us, we would probably be almost a crimeless society. Because before mass incarceration, one black person out of every 50 was going to prison. For as for white men, it was like 1 out of every 10. So we have always had a very low record of committing crimes. But when you brought in heroin and crack and mass incarceration and desperate poverty, and then you have a lack of mental health care, Holocaust survivors, a study was done showing that their grandchildren and great-grandchildren who had not experienced the Holocaust had heightened levels of depression and anxiety and trauma. Imagine what our kids inheriting 500 years of that. And you also make another point. It's something I've never thought of. We definitely do need to disaggregate, because some of these black people committing crimes may be the children of Caribbean immigrants, Afro-Latinos, African immigrants, or maybe black European people. They may not even be freedmen. And they do that for white Americans. They
Right.
even do that for Asians. They need to do that for us.
Hey, Kato, I want to kind of circle back to what we were saying. You all were speaking about before the 2A. You know I got to get back to that, brother. What is it that you can do? Because you were just saying, you got grandmothers that will, especially because of what had happened in Charleston a few years with Dylan Ruth, and also, just looking at Buffalo, our hearts go out to the families that were. People that were killed and injured in at Buffalo shooting, that pointless shooting. But I mean, being a proponent, everybody knows pretty much my history. But what do you do to really reach the ones that are like, oh, we need less guns in a situation like that rather than more guns? How do you convince them in your district that 2A would be a better like equalizer to be, because that you don't see a criminal such as that going into a police station shooting. They don't go onto a military base. They don't go anywhere where people are definitely armed and ready for them. They go into schools, a parking lot, a grocery store, a movie theater. These are places where there's soft targets. How do you convince people that say there should be less, that is not practical and it's not reasonable? How do you as a politician educate them and show them that the 2A should be the way?
Well, one thing I like to, because I'm a teacher and I teach ELA and social studies, I like to reference history. I reference American history, and I reference that even when America was under attack and it was deep warfare, they were hesitant to arm black people because they were afraid that our people being enslaved will be able to defend themselves from their brutality. And then when they did it, when they finally would arm us, they will say that, wow, we were like naturally trained fighters. We're the best fighters, even with no training and with the worst weapons. I look at the fact that the NRA, National Rifle Association, which usually resists any type of gun legislation. The only time they did support it, and the major drug dealer Ronald Reagan, was when the Black Panthers protested outside of a courthouse in Sacramento, California. All of a sudden, the National Rifle Association supported gun legislation then. So I tell them, this nation, the only time they've ever wanted to do something about gun legislation was when it was to disenfranchise Black Americans. And it was always because they were afraid we would have the ability to be able to protect ourselves. I also say to people, the same way it's not always quantity, it's quality. When it comes to gun ownership, it's not necessarily guns that are the issues, it's the people who get the guns, okay? That's the issue. And we have to come up with legislation that's going to keep guns out of the hands of these people. And that's why I am a proponent of mandatory background checks. That's why I am a proponent of people, and I know this is not always popular to a people, and I say we're just not going to read everything. That's just the facts. But I am a proponent of us registering our guns. So if something, you are responsible for that gun being in your possession. I am a proponent of people who have expressed terroristic or hateful or extremist ideology not being allowed the privilege of owning a firearm. We have to do a better job of keeping guns out of the hands of the wrong people, not taking guns from the hands of people that have done nothing to warrant such a decision.
Well, let me tippy toe in and help you out with this too. Statistic wise, in the case you have someone that is begging for their life, and only in 4% of the cases, and I'm saying this as because I'm a firearms instructor, but you licensed and certified legally. But as a firearms instructor, you're in cases where people are begging for their lives, and only 4% of the cases does that person allow that person who's begging for their life, who's unarmed, to live and go free. 96% of the time, that person does not survive that encounter. So that's important to know. And I think that people need to understand that begging for your life and praying to whomever you pray for, talking about your family, how you just started life, whatever the case, does not matter to somebody who's a criminal who came in there to look for a soft target. So that's something else that people need to understand in order to understand your point. You are actually fighting for life for our people. So that's actual fact.
And I want to say real quick, we know this nation spied on Malcolm X, spied on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., spied on Fannie Lou Hamer, even Billie Holiday, who was just a singer because she had the audacity to sing a song because she was mad about people lynching her people. They kept taxing them. And that was in the 1950s, 1960s. We know that when Bush did the Patriot Act, we found out that they were tapping people's phone lines, and pretty much Obama reauthorized the Patriot Act, and the government still has the authority to do that. I have had the FBI come to me, okay, had to get in the back seat with them in some black car. I felt like really important. I was like, oh, shoot, look at me. I'm bad now. I'm a bad boy now. I've got the FBI coming to my job. You know, they've called me. The Capitol Police has called me, you know, and when the FBI brought me the back seat of their car, they had this big dossier, photos of me and everything. So they keep up with people. How the hell did this white scumbag, how did he plan all this openly, wrote this manifesto, made all these hateful posts on the internet, and they never once flagged him? But I said, you know, I don't know, what did I do? I said, to Clyburn's little aide, whatever he was. I said, what do I have to do to get attention around here? Do I have to come in front of the office with an AK-47 like those white guys in Michigan? That's all. There was a question, and all hell broke loose when I said that. So if that could trigger the FBI having to come, they came another time too for something else that was a little different. And that one, okay, I give it to them. They probably need to come for that one. But if they could get triggered for that, how do you plan a whole massacre and they never come? So when I say background checks, I'm not talking about this simple. Let me see. You never committed a crime. You good? No, I'm talking about your social media posts. I'm talking about all of that needs to be examined before you get a gun put in your hand. Oh, yes. And Tyrone, yeah, he was with me one time when the FBI called me in Savannah. I mean, they call me all the time. I mean, they were like, hey, Marcel, what you doing said now? So, yeah.
Well, that's another thing. So people don't realize there are more handguns in this country than there are people. And you can actually buy, like the kids and the grown-ups are like printing them 3D printers, and you can't get rid of them. And you're really just handicapping the law-abiding citizens more and more when you implement certain laws, because people that are criminals, or people that are, it's in the Constitution, it's the Second Amendment 2A, and you really do need them to protect yourself and your family, even if you're out and about in the public. So thank you so much for that.
Well, real quick, this last point I want to be real quick. That scumbag, the black officer there, security guard, did shoot him, but he was wearing body armor. So had it not been for that, a lot of lives would have been prevented. And that's why I made that post that I'm looking into legislation to repeal armor. They have a ban, a prohibition on armor-piercing bullets. No, if we're going to go there, let's go there. We are not going to have things where these anti-black bigots or just these extremists could think they could be safe by shooting at us and wearing body armor, and they're protected. We need to take away that protection. So that's the way I'm thinking lately.
I have a question. So, that Dylan Roof incident was, it's just one of the most disheartening and, despicable, inhumane. I don't know, whatever the worst words you can use to describe that, those are the words that need to be attributed to that event. And you would think that coming off of something like that, you would see a large, significant type of policy, and especially coming with the context of the history of South Carolina, the history of Prince Rivers, and the history of all these great freedmen that are written about. What was done, on our behalf and the benefit for us, to make sure that something like that could never ever happen again, because we see it's continuing to happen around the country. But what was done behind that?
Really, George, you gonna ask that? You didn't hear Obama saying "Amazing Grace"? What more you want? The man got on stage and sang "Amazing Grace." That's what we got. Now, when agents were gunned down, which was terrible because wrong is wrong, Clyburn, his fingertips had to be seared. He typed that tweet up so fast. He said this was anti-Asian hate. He specified that it was an act against them. He used a hashtag, Stop Asian Hate. And then he actually used his power as a congressman. And he, as the whip, because I don't know if people know, the majority whip is nothing goes through legislatively if the majority whip is not for it. He pretty much did the COVID-19 hate bill. And I know there are a lot of people out there saying, well, that's not only for Asians. The implementation could be applied to everyone. But if you read the legislative text and they tell you about the purpose of that bill, they only specify Asians. It's amazing. When black people need something, right, they say black, and like you always say, George, and brown. They say and brown. They would say black and brown, or people of color, or minorities. It's like there's some rule where you can't just say black, and you definitely can't say black American. But in that bill, because I read the legislative text, They only said Asian Americans, hate crimes against Asian Americans. They got protection. Fast forward to that awful incident in Buffalo, excuse me. Clyburn did not even acknowledge that it was an anti-black hate
That's right.
attack. No hashtag stop anti-black
That's
racism,
right.
and no legislation for it. But I'll tell you what they did do, and this really pisses me off. I just read they passed a resolution condemning anti-Semitism, all because
Yes.
the scumbag had one anti-Semitic mark, but he had the
Right.
N-word written on his gun. He had "Here's your reparations" written on his gun, and in his manifesto, which I have not read, I don't know why people keep sending it to me. I don't want to read it. I know I know we got to probably know what the enemy thinking, but I can't. Apparently, he said the N-word more than any other word. Yet they won't even do a resolution condemning anti-black racism. This is our fault here.
Hey, Kato,
We allowed them to disrespect us like this.
that's right.
You talk about the white people stormed the Capitol. We should be down at the Capitol right now. We should be banging on their doors demanding accountability. That is unacceptable. We need an anti-black hate bill, an anti-black American hate bill right now, because you
That's
could
right.
believe, of course, that scumbag probably hated all black people, but you better believe when he was talking about how privileged black people are, he was talking about black Americans. You know he wasn't really thinking about necessarily black immigrants. And
That's
I'm
right.
glad Benjamin Crump is calling for one. And somebody told me his bill is calling for people of color to be protected. But I read it though. At least the one I read, it only says black people. The one I read.
Yeah, even in his tweet, when he made his tweet, he said that we need an anti-black hate crime bill for anti-black racism. You know what I mean? He actually tweeted that. Now, what's actually in the bill, I don't know.
And
But
my thing is this: why
yeah,
is he doing that? That's supposed to be Clyburn. You're the
right.
majority whip. The majority whip sets the legislative agenda. They are the ones that says either the president will say to them, "Hey, we need to get this done," and they come up with the idea, or they say, "Hey, this needs to be legislation on which we work," and they get the votes for it. Why is Clyburn not doing that?
And
I have never seen someone have such hatred towards people who are of his own lineage.
and
Yo,
you would
Clyburn
think
said,
that,
he said, why y'all fucking with me? Why y'all
Yes,
keep
he is.
fucking
Yep.
He did.
hey, and you would think that coming off a presidential victory a couple years ago, where that candidate that became the president, Biden, was pretty much dead in the water, and then Clyburn in South Carolina was given the credit for kind of resurrecting his campaign. And then when he sees him get across the finish line, he's the first one they put on TV, and they ask, well, what do you want? And see, when they ask, well, what do you want?
Oh yeah.
They're not asking Clyburn, hey, you, James Clyburn, what do you want for your household and your family? And that answer should be coming from a standpoint of what do I want for my people?
Right.
Because you only get
what do
one
the
vote,
people
Clyburn.
want? Yeah.
You get one, just like the
Well, you
rest of
heard
us.
what Clyburn said. I don't want nothing. And hold on. He said he just wanted a country where his kids and grandkids could pursue their aspirations and thrive. He meant exactly what he said, because some article that's been all over the place, and they've been trying to cover up. That's why they wrote that little fluff article that I posted this morning, where they talk about I and the other candidates are long shots. We haven't raised any significant money. And I called that reporter and I say, yeah, if I've been sitting on my tail for 30 years and getting donations from pharmaceutical companies and not doing it to help the people, I'll be a millionaire too. I mean, how are you going to compare that? But there's an article saying that Clyburn's been funneling money into his relatives, that apparently they start companies like Office Management LLC, and then they clean his office, and they've earned tens of thousands of dollars cleaning his office and maintaining his office. He's been paying them from campaign funds, campaign donations. Campaign expenditures are public. And when people try to come for me, I tell them, you can always check mines. Okay? I don't even pay myself, because politicians can pay themselves technically for campaigning. I don't do that. Every cent goals to getting the word out by my reparations campaign. So when he said he was only concerned about his grandkids and kids, he meant that.
Well, this is my question, Cato, regarding the constituents and regarding like when Congressman Clyburn came into office back in 93 until now. And people who have been historically voting for him and they're working, not one job anymore because the dollar isn't worth now what it was then. 30 years ago, the dollar was a lot, it had more weight to it. So what are you saying as far as bringing businesses and better paying business and jobs into the community that Clyburn is just not doing for the people? What are you saying to the people regarding that?
Well, outside of reparations, my other big thing is education and transportation. Big industries are not going to come to an area if they see that the schools are failing, because they usually look for an educated populace. They used to tell me that when I was in school. Teachers, especially when I was in high school, they say the reason why some big companies don't come here is not just because we're rural and a small population, which really not that small population, but because also the test scores of the school are so low. And they say that the businesses feel they won't have an educated populace. And my school district where I went, Jasper County, is unfortunately the lowest performing county in South Carolina. And South Carolina is number 7, educationally speaking, or 43rd of 50 states. And that's a high for South Carolina. We're usually hovering around 48 to 47. I mean, sometimes we've been 49. It's only been Mississippi that's kept us from being to the bottom. So I probably went to a school district that was probably one of the lowest performing in the nation. And unfortunately, it's still a lot of struggles here. I will say, just my point of personal privilege, that my test scores with my students, they come to me only 25, 30% read on grade level. They leave 75 to 78% on or above grade level. But it takes a lot out of me. And Ross, you know this, you ever taught in a troubled school district, it takes a lot out of a teacher to get those type of turnaround numbers. It's almost leads to burnout. But anyway, the reason there's such an educational inequity, we all know about the issues that impact kids before they come to school, but it also deals with a lot of the way that schools are funded. Beaufort County, which is next door to me, like the community of Bluffton, South Carolina, is the wealthiest town in South Carolina. And where some of my family, my great-grandfather's side of the family is from that part of South Carolina. It's only like 15, 20 minutes from me. And their tax revenue, property taxes, that's how schools are funded, is this high. You come to my county, Jasper County, in my town of Ridgeland, property tax revenue is this high. So one school can afford things like guidance counselors, psychologists, advanced chemistry courses, and things of that nature. Whereas my school was struggling to find a music teacher. I mean, my senior year, they had to pile all of us in a room, like 40 of us in a gym, to give us health classes. They finally found the health teacher right before we was about to graduate, and we all needed the credits. My plan is to write legislation that will, first of all, establish a state standard for each state. South Carolina may need this much money for each kid to get a high-quality education. If a county cannot meet that standard, the federal government will provide the additional funding that will go straight to the school board. It will skip all the politics of the Department of Education on the state level. And that way, schools will be able to provide tutoring, paraprofessionals in class, guidance counselors, and psychiatrists. I am a fan of us, unfortunately, having security in school, because if anyone's taught in a troubled school, you're living in a fantasy land if you think teachers don't need security. When you see some of the horrific levels of violence, that happens in schools. But we also need to deal with the underlying factors. That's why I want more social workers, not the ones going to come and take kids from Black parents like they do now, but I want us to work with families and support them with their needs. Guidance counselors, 3 meals a day for all kids, white, Black, rich, poor, whatever. That's one thing I'm going to do. Invest in our educational system. 2, transportation. Black Americans are the least likely to own a vehicle. I don't know if y'all know, but you can Google it. Black Americans are the least likely to own a vehicle. An illegal immigrant without a license is more likely to own a vehicle than a freedman. An accident just happened in front of my house the other day, and I'm pretty sure the people that I helped pull out, and these other 3 guys, I'm pretty sure they were in the country illegally, had a nice looking vehicle. Meanwhile, some of my relatives are having to catch rides. I plan the same way they have programs to help people become homeowners and down payment assistance. I plan to introduce something like that for vehicles, because especially me living in a rural area, we think of rural America, we think of usually a white person. Around 10 to 12% of the black population lives in rural America, and growing, because black people are moving back south and moving back to some of these rural communities. When they live out in these food deserts like mine, we have food deserts, we have healthcare deserts. They can't get to the grocery store. They can't get to a doctor's appointment or a hospital. They can't get to a teacher conference. They can't get to their jobs. They can't get to school. A car is literally a quality of life factor. Even to get to a bus system, if we have a bus system that only exists to take my people to Hilton Head Island so they can work at the hotels. I mean, yeah, talk about bad imagery. Even to get there, though, they have to get a ride to get to the bus depots. So transportation is a need. I'm also a fan of expanding public transportation, where people don't have to rely so much on vehicles, where we have bus systems running around the clock. It's going to be hard to get buses to go to areas where there's only a handful of people living. So my plan is to have quality, affordable housing in areas that are closer to where public transportation can reach. Because usually bus systems won't reach out, it won't be sustainable to areas that are far flung. There are ways to deal with that too, but trying to build quality, affordable housing in more compact areas so that we can have walkable communities again, and we can have public transportation again and not have to rely on vehicles. Those are 2 things: education, transportation, so people can get to their job. Last but not least, infrastructure. Clyburn, South Carolina, District 6. South Carolina's infrastructure has been rated a D, which means poor. Okay? We have poor roads, our bridges are crumbling, and we have a major issue with something that people may not think about, and that's sewage and water drainage. It's awful here. The reason those things are so bad here, why we have horrific flooding here, not just because we're in a swampy coastal area, is because we have small utility companies that often don't have large enough employees to qualify for federal grants to expand the infrastructure. I plan to introduce federal grants for smaller utility companies that will allow them to hire more staff and then to qualify for those larger grants. If you don't have access to water, if you don't have good roads, if you don't have ways to deliver your products and import products, you're not going to have industry. So education, transportation, infrastructure. That's not all, but those are the main 3 qualities.
Can I
I
ask
have
you
a
about
question.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a
This is
question.
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Kato, in what ways does the governor of the state, in what ways does his particular politics line up with yours? Like, can you break down where you kind of agree, the points you agree on with the governor, or where his politics lines up with yours?
So I'm not really a Governor McMaster fan, but where we do agree are on the issues where I tend to overlap with Republicans, generally speaking. He is strongly against illegal immigration, as am I. He is strongly against sanctuary cities, as am I. I'm actually not against sanctuary cities. Don't let your jaw hit the floor. I'm for sanctuary cities for Black Americans, freedmen. Hell, we need some damn sanctuary, if anyone. But for illegal immigrants, they should be outlawed. You should not have a place where you are exempt from obeying and enforcing the law. We also align when it comes to abortion. And of course, I might be getting further to the right of him when it comes to Second Amendment, because that's where I'm becoming more and more and more radical when it comes to gun ownership, just because of the current situation, but also I've been just doing so much more research into the history of gun legislation here. He also has done some things that have surprised me, though. He took the COVID-19 funds and he put them towards paying for people's college education, mainly vocational training. But that's something I support. I feel like for everyone, to or citizens, obviously, college, university education to be tuition free. Now, he didn't go that far, but he did pay for people's tuition with the remaining COVID funds. He also, this may surprise you, is a big proponent, but this is usually the case with white Republicans, at least in South Carolina. They usually are, it's crazy enough, a big proponent of Black businesses. He has been very supportive of Black businesses, at least in word. From a policy standpoint, I can't speak there, but he's always speaking about the importance of Black businesses and highlighting how South Carolina's history when it comes to Black business, South Carolina being the original Black state, first to become majority Black, state that was majority Black the longest. He's always highlighting South Carolina's history as a state of Black entrepreneurship. So at least in word, policy, I don't say. So we at least overlap there. Outside of that, we're probably as different as night and day. But maybe he'll be smart enough to see, because y'all know I'm a fan of the reverse migration movement, Black Americans moving back to the South. And those states, being Louisiana, the states that we can do the quickest, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and Maryland, and South Carolina, obviously. I don't know if he will be a fan of that, but he should, because there'll be more people in his state. And Black Americans were entrepreneurial. We are, again, and have always been the fastest growing entrepreneurial group. What we have lacked are access to resources. We've never lacked the intellect and the ambition and the ingenuity.
You wanted to follow up, Roz? I do
Yeah,
have
I
another
wanted
question.
to it's a few things. I wanted to circle back to the education and the immigration that's happening in South Carolina. I wanted to know, I know you being an educator are looking at those budgets that as they're coming out for the school year. And I've been, for me and for others, I was really, people are like really surprised that the immigration, I say ESOL, English as a second language courses are far supersede the STEAM courses. That's science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Their matter of fact, their budget is 6 times larger than the STEAM classes put together in our county. And that was just like really, depressing, because you see kids, but the program for kids that are having difficulty, who tend to be the American freedmen children, was very it's not pretty much non-existent.
I'm about to
And
say
they're
it's
actually trying to
non-existent.
they're trying to get our kids to start taking the ESOL classes like they don't even know English. So I wanted to say that's a mix. Once people find out that all the money that you had back in the day is actually going into ESOL and not into remedial learning and phonics and things of that nature. So I think parents need to look at, and you as an educator, once people understand, like, wait a minute, why is my child, who is an American freedman, a Black American child, grew up through generations of being a Black child in America, they're in a predominantly class where kids can't speak English and they're learning English. And and people don't know why. So I want you to kind of like be able to touch on that and how the governor could possibly help, like if you're doing the reverse migration of people back to South Carolina, you can actually recruit an army of, we heard it through Obama, but I mean a real army of, teachers to come to South Carolina that are of our lineage and be able to teach. Why isn't that being looked at? Or is that something that you plan on doing once you're in office?
Well, I want to say something about that. I don't know if y'all read the Texas governor. I forgot his name. Abbott.
Greg Abbott.
He is actually trying to challenge the Supreme Court case where it said that you have to educate all children, whether they're in the country legal or illegally. Find that interesting. You're just going to see how that develops. But Ross, I talk about that all the time. How these English as a second language programs gets billions of dollars. But to add insult to injury, it comes from the Department of Civil Rights, a department that exists because of us. Okay, we are the pioneers of civil rights in the United States of America. And yet, the majority of the funds are going to people that are not freedmen. In my school, I've had some of those same children. Most of them in my school are of Hispanic ethnicity, not Afro-Latino, Hispanic ethnicity. Can barely speak English, but they know how to say the N-word. They know how to come here and say that our kids eat fried chicken all day, and it's happened. The majority of the anti-Black remarks that happen in my school are always from some of these Hispanic students. And not only do they get these English as a second language classes, they get advocates. They get people to make sure they're being well represented. They get people to make sure they're being taught well and not failing because of their language. And even in the majority Black schools, speaking of STEM, which I'm a fan of STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, I like to say STEAM, Black children are underrepresented in STEAM courses, even when they are the majority of the students there. And why? Well, because first of all, white Americans usually have STEAM courses advertised to them. And if they're from a family that's more economically solid, they usually have parents who can expose them to different career fields and tell them the courses they need to take to go there. A lot of these kids who take the ESOL programs, those people who are teaching that department, they usually make sure those kids get into certain courses. No one's there advocating for our students. Now, here in South Carolina, especially my area, the Low Country, English as a second language, we should be teaching the Black kids here Gullah or Sea Island Creole, a language that almost no one speaks anymore except for the older people. But people are trying to learn it again, and I plan to do it too. But there's no one advocating for us. I plan to make us a protected class where we are going to have a department pretty much set aside for us within the Department of Education, fairly and on the state level. I plan to have federal funding set aside for us to start our own freedmen schools, have our own freedmen teachers. And even if we have subcategories, let's say you're a freedman, let's say you're Louisiana Creole or you're Gullah Geechee, you could start a charter school just focusing on that. I feel it was a big mistake. Integration wiped out like 86% of Black teachers. I feel we need to get back to that. There was nothing wrong with our schools that was our fault. The fault was this country depriving us of resources. I want us to bring our school back. And as far as the role of the governor in that, that's not something I've thought about.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question, and I think maybe we want to open it up after this, Ali, for people in the and out there in the audience that want to maybe have a question they want to ask Brother Marcel. But
All right.
just staying on the illegal immigrant topic, what are some things that you've seen? I know we talked about education, but outside of that, what are some things that you've seen with the illegal immigration issue in your district that that are big problems and things that Clyburn should be advocating to correct, or that you would correct? And I have one more question after that, but go ahead. I want to see what you.
Well, one, I've already mentioned the anti-Blackness that comes from a lot of them, calling our kids cotton picker, the N-word, fried chicken lovers. Those are things, some of those things that happened recently this year. Now, when I hear it, I check them. And they be looking to make sure I'm not around when they let that stuff come out their mouth. But I hear more anti-Black statements from the Hispanic kids, however they want to identify, than I do from the white Southern kids who have been here. And that's not something I'm making up. So that's one thing. Two, we all know that Black people, we only own now around 1 million acres of property, because we've had 15 million acres of property stolen from us, about which Clyburn has done nothing about. I have seen, though, our people are still losing property by means of poverty because we can't afford sometimes to pay the taxes. And I have seen those same illegal immigrants there buying up property. So while they are acquiring land and building big houses and driving nicer vehicles, our rate of home ownership is now lower than Jim Crow. Our rate of land ownership is almost non-existent. And even though you got the good old coons around here who will say, well, we got to work hard. We sell our land. Our people usually sell our land because we're economically deprived, and we usually feel that that's the only way we can get money. A lot of people originally try to hold on to land. Usually selling it is an act of desperation, or they can't afford the taxes and they sell it for little to nothing. So while their statistics are getting better, ours is going further down. Clyburn, there's a deal called New Deal for New Americans. That bill is a lot more sinister than we think. It's not just to make these illegal citizens, it will make them a protected class. They will not be allowed to be deported for 20 years. So, while some of us, I know this is a debate about us on the federal level, while we talk about local level, they're going to the federal level where they can go to any state and work and be protected from deportation. But that bill also says it will give them resources in housing and education and health care. Okay? Yet there is no such bill like that being written for us. So I don't necessarily blame the illegal immigrants so much. I do want to target the source, the employers and the sorry politicians. But the fact of the matter is, you first of all, you're in our country illegally, so you are breaking the law. You are taking jobs that Black Americans will do. Because you look at what happened in Stowell, Georgia, Forest, Mississippi, Chicago, Illinois, Tar Heel, North Carolina. All of those places were areas where ICE did raids doing in farms and poultry plants. All the time we've been told jobs that the Americans don't want to do. Guess who lined up the next day doing those jobs and doing it well? Freemen, Black Americans. Center for American Progress, 38% of construction employees are illegal immigrants. 39% of roofers and drywall installers are illegal immigrants. 34% of carpenters are illegal immigrants. Painters, 31%. Those were all jobs that Black Americans used to do and still do. My nephew does flooring and those type of jobs. This myth that they are doing jobs that we won't do is a myth. No, they're doing jobs that we refuse to do for slave wages.
There
Okay?
you go. There you go.
And let me tell you what happened. In Forest, Mississippi, when Black people took the jobs that the illegal immigrants were doing, they started to quit. And some of these, our white liberal allies came, quotation marks there, came along saying, and we got to talk about white liberal allies one day. I get more hateful messages from them than I do from the white Republicans. We'll talk about that sometime later. But they will say, you see, we need immigrants. We need immigrants. You see, Black people don't want to do those jobs either. Actually, when a reporter went and investigated, the reason the Black employees started quitting is because the conditions of the factory were so unsafe because the owners of the factories were not OSHA compliant and the illegal immigrants weren't complaining because they were afraid of getting deported. And our people said, we ain't gonna put our lives at risk because of this. So it wasn't that we didn't want to do the job, we weren't gonna do it for free, and we weren't gonna do it sacrificing our arm and leg. That's what it is.
That's right.
So I'm seeing that happen here too. What I used to growing up, you always saw Black men doing roofing and doing flooring. Like I have my nephew, like this house and my great grandmother's house next door, work is getting done. Nephew's doing that job. I have my cousin's father, the father of my cousin doing that job. Black men have always done those jobs. Now I drive to work. You see none of a bunch of construction firms with people who are Hispanic ethnicity, and you can believe some of them are here illegally. And like I said, ain't mad at them necessarily, but a lot of them are anti-Black. And if they are anti-Black, yes, I am mad at you. No.
And let me tell you this, man, right here, and the guys know because we're all on the phone like all the time, and they can hear the construction that was going on in the complex where I live here in the city. All of the workers were foreigners. They were either Latinos or Caribbeans. All of them. All of them. And like you saying, I guarantee you there was a large part of them who were illegal aliens because one of the things we know about New York City is they provide sanctuary for illegal aliens, sanctuary, driver's licenses, the right to vote. They want to give illegal aliens, non-citizens, whatever. They want to give them the rights to citizenship. Meanwhile, they're
What's the point of being a citizen?
right. What's the point of being a citizen? It weakens the votes of the freedmen, and then on top of that, you got freedmen whose driver's licenses are being suspended for outstanding child support arrears. Meanwhile, you got these illegals who probably got a shit ton of
Kids
kids in
all
whatever
over the
country
place.
and getting driver's licenses and the right to vote. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, here, check this out. You got people coming to this country illegally who came here leaving their kids, or you got some who came here illegally with their child. Now, let a black person, just
Go
jaywalk
in the
with their
store.
kid,
You know what I'm saying?
and they are going to throw the book at you. Let a like the black lady that was on an interview in the mall, and her kids were across the mall, some distance, but she could still see them. And she told them to play on the playground while she did the interview, and they arrested that woman and took her kids from her. And that's how they threw the book at us. However, be illegal, hop a damn border, don't know English, and not only will you get a driver's license and a right to vote, whereas a black woman who simply one time wrote a bad check and it bounced, and she went to prison for it, went to vote and got arrested for it. But if you're illegal, according to New York's stupid way of thinking, you should get the right to vote. And according to Joe Crow, the segregationist in the White House right now, you should also get $450,000 for your pain and suffering. You broke the law. You're supposed to go through some pain and suffering. Okay? My brother's right now in prison for some conspiracy they claim he was a part of. And they had him in a room literally the size of a closet. He got that nasty, what's that nasty? It's called Mercer's. Is that what it's called?
Oh, yes, Mercer.
Yes, Mercer. He got that nasty Mercer because the room was so filthy, and they will only let him out once a week. Okay? Does he get $450,000? He has kids. He has 4 kids. Does he get $450,000 to be separated from his kids? You see the double standard? That's another problem I have with illegal immigration. But again, another issue with the illegal immigrants. Remember the Joe Biden administration? They did this on purpose. Actually, I think it started with Trump, and then this segregationist inherited it. They tried to set aside like $5 million or $5 billion for black farmers. Really, it was not for black farmers, because you read the fine print, it says Asians, Native Americans. I'm not sure why they tried to say it was just for us. First of all, the reason it didn't go through is because they did not make it specific. You cannot do race-based. It should have been lineage-based. It wasn't farmers from Jamaica and Nigeria being discriminated against by the United States Department of Agriculture. That was happening to freedmen. But second of all, the suit that was filed against that money, it wasn't, people talk about some white farmers. It was not just white farmers. Read it. It was also Hispanic farmers. Some of them you could believe their parents were illegal. So these people that some of us want to feel sorry for, they will come here and immediately get on anti-black code. They're not our friends, by and large.
That's a fact. If I could, I wanted to ask you. I saw something in your reparations piece where the case for reparations. This is a little bit moving away from what we were talking about. You mentioned $20 billion for the reestablishment of the Freedmen's Bureau. Can you explain how did you come up with the $20 billion number? Or where does that come from?
It's supposed to be 20 trillion. And
Okay.
that will be used, so that must be a typo. That will be used mainly for staffing and establishing the Freedmen's Bureau throughout the South. And we did that by studying the work of Dr. Kramer, Darity, Mullen, Dr. Claude Addison, and my team and I discussed that will be a good amount to start off with for staffing the Freedmen's Bureau, the overall branch in D.C., but also throughout most of the former slave holding states, which would mainly be in the South. We want it to be like Veteran Affairs, supposed to take care of all the needs of veterans. The Freedmen's Bureau will take care of all the needs of freedmen. But this time, it's going to be independent of the government. They're going to finance it, but that's it. Any inclusion they have will be advisory in nature, and it's going to be staffed by freedmen. So in order to staff them, to pay them, and to actually set up the physical buildings and to actually get the systems in place, we came up with $20 trillion just from looking at what some other Bureau of Indian Affairs have gotten.
Yes, we have some legislation that we're working on too that we want you to check out.
Okay.
After the show, I'll send it to you. We and get your feedback and on it, and maybe we can do some input. You know what I'm saying? We're trying to get different people involved. We actually had a Zoom meeting. Was it last night, right, Josh? And
Yeah, that was
we
last night.
we were talking to different different organizations, freedmen organizations around the country, and trying to really get everybody to form up, because I think we at this place where we have to start unifying and really trying to move together. And so that's one of the things that we talked about during the meeting was the legislation that we were working on. I think they have a disaggregation bill that they're working on. You know what I mean? And so we're trying to all come together and really like brainstorm it and try to use whatever it is that we have to make this thing work the way it's
Ali, can
supposed
I
to
say
work.
something real quick?
Yes, sir.
Christopher, I see in the comments 20 trillion is not enough. 20 trillion is not the full amount. So please go to marcelcarnes.com. Christopher Perkins, go to We Deserve Better and actually read the plan, and then you can actually criticize it.
That's right. Definitely. And so anyway, Raj, you got anything else, Josh? I do have one more question. Let me ask
Yeah,
this. It's kind of
go ahead.
controversial. Kind of controversial. Something
I
else that I
love
saw.
controversy, as y'all know. So yeah, I
Well,
love me some controversy.
well, it's not. But anyway, it's one of the points that you raised in your piece, understanding the case for reparations, was that whites empowered the United States government to tolerate a segment of its citizens being enslaved. Now, many people, we understand what that is, but many people may not understand what you mean when you say citizens were enslaved. So, for the people who may not understand that and are of the old way of thinking that slaves weren't citizens, could you kind of go into that a little bit? And after you're done, I'll camel back on what you break down.
So that was something I actually first heard that from y'all. It was I never thought about it. It's not like I accepted that we were not citizens. I just never thought about it. I never thought. I just knew that we were enslaved and it was allowed. Never thought about whether it was constitutional or not. I always knew that the Constitution never specified race, never mentioned the word slavery. So when y'all first mentioned it on an episode about how the Constitution actually that black people were actually supposed to be protected under the Constitution, I always like to do my own research, and I found out that one, there was people always felt that the Constitution actually sanctioned, well, not sanctioned, but was pro-slavery. But there was another view, even during the times of chattel slavery, that it was anti-slavery. And the Constitution is actually race neutral. And not only that, at the time the Constitution was ratified, Black Americans were actually voting in several of the states of the United States of America. Also, the federal government actually never, ever could defend slavery because slavery was not constitutional. That's why it was done on a state-by-state basis. And no one ever really used the Constitution to defend slavery. That's why when the Confederacy, and I read the Confederacy's Constitution, it is almost just like the U.S. Constitution. The only difference is they specifically add the word Negro to it. They specifically mention slavery, and they specifically say that slavery is a protected institution. It's almost word for word the same. The Constitution, if anybody wants to argue about it in regards to slavery, it actually served to stop slavery. It actually counted Black people in slave states. It actually took away representation from the slaveholding states. So in a sense, it punished them. It actually brought an end to the importation of people that were enslaved, even though it never really mentioned a Black person or even the word slave. So I came to find out that the Constitution really did apply to Black people because there were Black people who were free and voting all along. And
That's
even when the
right.
Dred Scott decision happened, there were still black people who were actually voting and were citizens, and were still voting and were citizens even after the Dred Scott case said black Americans were not citizens. And the other thing I found out, and I did this research when I was going to challenge Michael Harriot, which you saw as well. I could have saved a lot of study time, but they that another reason why the Dred Scott decision, because people think the Supreme Court can't be wrong. They were. And the Dred Scott decision is one that people say was wrong. The Dred Scott decision was wrong because if slaves were just property, as that ruling said, then how could a piece of property challenge, bring a case to the Supreme Court? So the whole ruling was hypocritical and was unconstitutional. So black people were always supposed to be protected by the Constitution, but the federal government failed to uphold that, which is why even more of a case for reparations. But I want to say real quick, even if, like I said to Michael Harriot, even if slavery was constitutional, I don't give a damn. The internment of Japanese Americans will happen. Okay, that was legal. The Native Americans, the Indian Removal Act, all of that stuff happened legally, and they still got reparations for it. So even if people try to make that argument, it's a moot point either way.
That's right. That's right, my brother. So, for the people who want to maybe look further into what brother's talking about, there's a whole book by a man named Lysander Spooner called "The Unconstitutionality of Slavery." He goes into some very in-depth details about not. He wrote, I think that was before the Dred Scott case that he actually published that book. But he goes into some great details about the Constitution, the interpretation of the Constitution, um, the Articles of Confederation, the Articles of Association. He goes into the colonial charters to show how the colonial charters of each one of the original 13 colonies never authorized the institution of slavery. He even goes back into when they were colonies and dealing with the common law of England and the constitution, the laws of England that would have been considered the constitutional laws for the colony, how none of those particular laws actually authorized the institution of chattel slavery. And it's really interesting when you go into the Federalist Papers. Madison also talked about the fact that um, there's no such thing as a person having a right to property in man, and so a lot of this stuff has been there. Just people didn't really understand it, and so even with the concept, let's deal with the concept of slaves being citizens. I was talking with a professor from Howard University who was kind of like challenging the idea, right? He was like, "How can a slave be a citizen?" Well, I say, here's the thing. One of the ways that you can really see it manifested is by way of the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment actually shows you how a person can be a slave and a citizen simultaneously, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it says, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist, whatever, except as a punishment for a crime where the person was duly convicted.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing: when a person is convicted of a crime, a citizen is convicted of a crime, they don't lose their citizenship,
You
but
don't.
according to the Constitution, they are now a slave
Mhm.
of the state, and they
Yep.
are able to be forced into involuntary servitude. So not only are they slave, but they're now committed to involuntary servitude. They hold the status of a slave, but at the same time, they're still citizens of the United States. So that's one of the easiest ways to see how a person can be a slave simultaneously and a citizen. But yeah, brother. So I just wanted to go in on that because I know that that's kind of a tricky thing for a lot of people where they don't really understand where that's coming from. So
That's why they did
excellent.
death towards prison. That's why they were doing vagrancy laws and death towards prison and coming with all these stupid, no wrong reasons. Like they were arresting black men. I forgot what these laws were called, where a black man couldn't be black man or a black woman, obviously, but especially black men because they wanted them to continue working on the railroad. A black man couldn't be seen just standing around. Um,
Vagrancy laws.
Vagrancy laws.
Vagrancy laws, right? Vagrancy laws.
Mm-hmm.
And they would arrest them for that because they knew if we get them in prison, we could put them in slavery again. That's why they would arrest black women in their third trimester so they can give birth to a child in prison, and then the child becomes a ward of the state. The history of this nation's anti-blacks is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
And you know what, Marcel? I mean, Cato, I wanted to say it's really important for you to be running a BTP, to have this podcast for By the People Media, and for all the people educating, because I think it's, I mean, Carter G. Woodson wrote The Miseducation of the Negro. Well, hell, it's the miseducation of the country. I think people
Got
are
that right.
very well miseducated. And I mean, even this crazy guy that went in on this guy that went on this rampage up in Buffalo, and people are thinking that we just had a podcast and interviewed people from Evanston, Illinois. People actually think that they received 20. Everybody received what, $25,000, and people are
Nope.
calling and congratulating them for receiving money that they never got, because that's not reparations. And people are going around angry at, like this guy, this nut, going around thinking that people are getting $25,000 and they getting reparations, which they did not get. So people are very well miseducated. And if I look at it, the power media that's out there, the television and radio stations that's out there, and that's not us. They are to be blamed for that also,
They
because
absolutely are.
their message miseducating the people. But I think it's important that you're doing what you're doing and we're doing what we're doing. So thank you for that.
Thank y'all.
I got one last question for you, just to kind of wrap up, and that is, uh, so like we mentioned, we talked about how long your competitor that you're trying to unseat has been around. Um, I just want to see if you can sum up what you said by telling us, because we know how things have looked for the last 30 years, but I want to see if you can tell us how things in your vision would be in your district in the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Well, one,
Notice what I did there, right?
right. Well, one, my people in my district, Freedmen, and outside of my district, are going to have reparations, which means return to Freedmen's Bureau, direct monetary payments, protected class status, a return to black farming, compensation for lost land, and incentivizing of returning them to our ancestral land of the U.S. in the American South. Two, Black American freedmen neighborhoods are going to be protected from things like eminent domain that destroyed many communities, like the community where I grew up. There's going to be industries in my community. But unlike in times past, where Black people were usually displaced when industry came, like they tried to do with Mason, Tennessee. Finally, industries coming, and the Black people are probably getting ran out their own areas. No, I am going to make it mandatory. You come to this area, and well, I should say I'm going to partner with the private sector. That's more of a friendlier way to do it. You hire and invest in the people there. You train the people there. You train the populace there. Okay? It's always, sometimes it's really better to start with where you are now. We are going to get rid of these healthcare deserts, these food deserts. We're going to have accessible, affordable transportation. Healthcare, college, university should be free of charge. And as far as homelessness goes, which Black Americans, 15-20% of the population, over 55% of the homeless, I'm going to make it to where we are not even 1%. And starting in my district, I'm also going to hope, last but not least, that my district becomes the model district of the reverse migration movement. And just to announce, I already have people that have moved to my area, and it's not just because of me, but some of them have mentioned because of me, like Black freedmen who have moved to South Carolina. So it's already beginning. But when I get this platform and I'm able to give voice to the reverse migration movement, hopefully that will really put some wind behind it. I'm for separate. I'm for us having our own communities. I was never a person who felt I needed to sit by a white person to feel validated. I was always loved seeing our people, always wanted us to have our own communities, and that's what our ancestors wanted. We always talk about Special Field Order 15. We always leave out the part where they told General Sherman they wanted to be away from white Americans and have their own community. Okay? Separation is not
That's a
ugly. It
fact.
doesn't have to be malicious. There was nothing wrong with us having our own communities. The problem was Jim Crow and redlining and the anti-blackness. This time, we'll have our resources and our reparations and our own communities and our own Black Wall Streets, like we should have had when all of us were born.
Absolutely. So I don't know. I don't really see any questions in the chat. Um, I
I
think
wanted
people are
to,
just
yeah,
enjoying
I
the
I am
knowledge. Go
too.
ahead,
I just,
Roz.
hey,
Yeah.
Ali, I just wanted to get more into, like we were speaking about a little bit before in setting this interview up. I mean, Cato, and I had met Cato online and with anything else, and we got into a conversation offline and like exchanging numbers. This was sometime last year. And I mean, we were talking online during the BTP show. That was like this is kind of like a homecoming to me, except for no food. But other than that, I just wanted, to get a little bit into how all of this ended up happening, because people were asking me, said, hey, how come, Cato's not being interviewed by BTP? And I was like, well, people have been asking me, and I'm like, hey, I called Nyhiem, and then I called Ali, and now it's happening. That just like it seemed like that quick. It's easy, but it isn't, right? So I just wanted to, like I said, thank the brothers for uh finding time in that space. And Cato, I mean, you're always busy. I always see you online. And just wanted to thank both of you guys for or all of you gentlemen for coming together for yes brothers, and being able to take this time in order to have this. I've been having a blast here. So I'm really smiling all the way inside. So thank you.
And I was happy to be back. It's been a while. So, Ali, Josh, thank you for having me, and Ross, thank you for setting this up. And yeah, I hope to be back soon.
Oh yeah. I would just say to that, it's in the words of my brother Naeem, it's providence, man. Everything happens the way that it's supposed to happen, and when it's supposed to happen. It's interesting because I see how well the brother is doing in terms of how he's reached so many people, and he's gotten so much support. I believe that Cato separated himself from BTP, having that separation allowed Cato to actually reach people that he probably wouldn't have reached if we had stayed connected from the beginning. You see what I'm saying? Because there are a lot we already understand there's a lot of people that don't like us for different reasons, right? So we get that. But I think what would have happened if Cato and us stayed together, um, he probably wouldn't be as far along as he is. I really feel that, and I think that like I said, it's providence. Everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. You know what I mean? And the amount of support and the amount of love that he's getting, he deserves it, and that's what it's supposed to be.
Well, thank you for that, Ali. And let me tell you, my enemy list, I can fill up the enemy list. My enemy list is going. So, but when you have that, you're doing something right. I've gone through that as a teacher. As a teacher, I was always that teacher, the one that's tough as heck on the kids and doesn't take crap. And some of the parents want to complain about it. Never cared then because I knew I was doing what was right. And at the end of the day, my data was always the best. And that's the same way it's going to be with this. And you know what? I've saw billboards for Clyburn. I never see Clyburn put a billboard up ever telling people to come out and vote for him. The fact that he's having to do that shows that a change has already been made. He's
That's
already
right.
been put on notice. And if he's been put on notice, the rest of the Congressional Slack Caucus is saying, oh man, I hope nobody in my district challenges me now with that same type of fire. Put them all on notice. Sometimes sometimes losing, and I always tell the people, I strongly believe I'm going to win. But I say this though, losing for the right reason is not the same as losing. And that's what I've always said.
Well, I definitely appreciate you running. I appreciate you um, using your
There,
platform
but
to
wait,
speak.
Josh, wait. You know how we do. This is it. This is BTP. Now there is somebody in the chat that has been trolling, and
Oh,
you know BTP gives links, man. So Kato know what time it is with that. So look, man, I don't know what's the guy's name. It's like NPG or I don't know some.
oh man.
It seemed like he had some kind of issues with some stuff being said.
Index.
Index or Index, you wanna jump on and like I mean, you know what I mean? I know Kato
I would
gotta
love
go.
to
We ain't
speak with
trying
him.
to we ain't trying to keep Kato on, but look, Index, you wanna jump on? So I put the link in, which I say, put the link in, put the link in the chat for Index. Let's see if
Oh yeah,
Index
please do,
jumps
because
on.
I see him talking about segregation and all that stuff like that. I would love to speak with him about that.
I just put the link in the chat. Index, jump on. This should be funny. Let's see if he jumps on. He said he's not gonna jump on. These people are cowards.
Come on, why not?
Index. Come
Come
on,
on, why
Index.
not? Jump on. It's a, we're nice.
That's right, Michael Jordan. Division is divine. That shit comes from God. I've been saying that.
Exactly. I always say to people, a wolf does. Oh, he's just showing concerns. Okay, well, keep your concerns in the chat. But anyway, a wolf does not unite with every wolf in the wilderness. Okay, that's why they have wolf packs and not just one large wolf pack. A wolf is not going to join the pack, but a wolf is going to tear it apart. They're going to say, "Get out of here." They're going to be with wolves that are going to be on the same mission as them. Likewise, we as freedmen have a right to run our own communities. We as freedmen have a right to want to be selective with whom we associate with. I mean, division is actually sometimes a way of helping people survive.
Hey,
So,
hey,
y'all, I don't
Kato.
think he's coming up. But y'all,
Nah, he's
thank you all
not.
for having me. I gotta be up tomorrow for work. Well, I know you do too.
Oh yeah,
How's the
no
school
doubt.
year been going? Real quick.
No, I haven't. I mean, that's a different story. So, I
That's a
mean,
different. Okay, well, we're gonna talk
yeah,
about it
we
offline.
All
Okay,
right.
y'all. Thank y'all for having me.
All right.
all
Peace,
right.
Kato.
Well,
Hey, y'all
thank
take
you
care.
so much for
All right.
Take care, brother.
coming on with us
Thanks for
tonight.
hopping on.
Yes, yes. So, family, that was our brother. You know, I affectionately call him our little brother. He's the BTP Cato in the building. A lot of people don't know that. That's BTP Cato, right? That's how he started. Now he's, Marcel for Congress, right? So it is what it is. What it is. But anyway, Roz, you got anything before we close?
Well, actually, I just wanted to thank everybody that it decide, is on. I don't know, I don't see all the chat or anything, but that's okay. I just wanted to let everybody know that thank you for coming on and thank you for supporting. And if you can, please donate. It's right there, marcelforcongress.com/donate in order to put something into the brothers campaign. It, and like he says, it doesn't matter if it's like $3 or 300 or 3,000. You can put up to 999, 9,999. I think it is, right. But whatever. But put something in there, because he has a battle with Clyburn, and it's really, I mean, if you look at it side by side, what he's doing for our community, he's really not afraid to, one thing I see about him, he'll address all comers, and I don't see the incumbent Jim Clyburn doing that. I don't see that happening where he's addressing all comers, because if it were, I mean, he has a lot to lose if he comes out and goes head to head against Cato. Cato
Mm,
will just put him. He's not ready for that kind of work, and I'm gonna say that openly. He's not ready for that kind of work that Cato will be able to bring. So he's basically dodging and not trying to come at him in any kind of direct fashion. So, but I want
that's
to
right.
thank him for being able to come on, Cato, for being able to come on and being able to share with us and break down that information. And that's pretty much it. we're by the people media and be the power, and a lot of times that's what we want you to do is our media is things that you may be interested in, and it's by the people, and it's media that's for the people and by the people, and
That's
be
right.
the power. So thank you.
Thank you, Roz. Thank you for setting it up and you know what I'm saying, being here with
Sure.
us through the whole thing. Brother Josh, you got any closing?
I'm just glad that we were able to hear what the brother had to share about his campaign. You know, he really is a strong uh, person to talk about these issues. I was really impressed by um, how well he knew the subject matter. I was impressed by how deeply um, in touch he is with the community that he's running to represent. Like, he knows it well. He knows it in and out like the back of his hand, and he knows exactly what we need. He understands our um, the necessity from the local level all the way to the national level. And I think that's what you need in a person. And he's not scared at all to speak to our issues. He's not having to use, certain coded language and certain safe language amongst the establishment. He's just speaking it like he's BTP Kato. You know what I mean? And that's what I appreciate. And so
Facts.
I would say, look, we need to we need to make sure that there's some power resources put behind his campaign and building up that brand in that area. So what we can do, that's what we should do. If you're in the area and you have the ability to make a contribution financially or with your time, um, make that. And if we want to, we're not going to talk about whether he's going to actually unseat Clyburn or not. But I just look at it as like, number one, we can look at things from the long game. Clyburn is one of the most powerful Democrats in the Congress. So eventually, I mean, he's old. He's not. I mean, he's been there since 1993. He doesn't look like he's spring chicken. So what's going to happen? That's a seat that we definitely need to continue to work at, and the brother now is getting some momentum, and that needs to build up and keep building up and keep putting the pressure on, because eventually, you know, that's going to be a place where we can get a victory. So I don't think there's any room for pessimism or skepticism. That's just, hey man, he's showing you who he is, and I appreciate it. He seems like a guy that, um, well, we know from experience, good, bad, or whatever, indifferent. He's gonna tell you, he's gonna keep it real. I'm not gonna tell you too much about that, but he's gonna keep it official, and that's what I appreciate about him. So, um,
And hey Josh, real quick, I think that too, because of his ability to just head on attack the subject and have knowledge of it. He's not beating around the bush. He's not dodging. He's not, he tells you straight up whether you are going to be, he feels you're going to be angry depending on the crowd. He doesn't change up what he's saying, and you believe in, like, hey, this guy is committed and dedicated. He has plans, not a plan. He has several plans, and you see that fire, you see that energy, you see the ideas, the smarts, the willingness to jump in and roll his sleeves up and do this. So it's undeniable that that's where the fire and the energy is, and it needs to be for the people in South Carolina's 6th district. You need that. You don't need the same ideas and the same thing that's happening, because it's unfortunate how their standing as far as education and economics is, and they're just, you can't, want something better and you're repeating the same thing. And I think, by him being able to galvanize, the different freedmen, I guess the freedmen community, I'm gonna put it that way. People are really supporting him. People are really understanding that he is, sincere, his sincerity, his heart, and his drive. I mean, he's a full-time teacher and then running for office and doing this with, with on a shoestring budget from the people. So I think all of that comes together and it just makes it that much more real. So as far as history making, this is history making. Everyone who has been supporting, who has phone banked, who has donated, is a part of that history that's in the making right now.
That's
What do
right.
you
Right.
guys think?
That's right. I agree 110%. This is history in the making, actual facts, actual facts. But we at the 2 hour mark, right? At the 2 hour mark, and our brother Nyhiem is here. Nyhiem does the closing. So, brother Nyhiem, if you ready to take us out of here, we can get up out of here, bro.
Peace, peace. What's going on, fam? I ain't even know I was on the stream. Y'all already know what time it is. First, honors to our panel, man. Sister Roz, BTP Josh, BTP Ali. Honors for brother uh Kato, brother Marcel for coming on and doing the interview. It was fire. Make sure y'all hit the like button, make sure y'all share, make sure y'all donate to the brothers campaign, etc., etc. And y'all already know what time it is, man. Brother Cato embodies the message of this platform, which is don't just fight the power, become the power. And then and only then will you have the power to make a change. And with that, say peace.